Hello and welcome back to Flat Caps and Classics. First of all, welcome to all the new subscribers. Thank you very much for subscribing and commenting and generally being part of these videos as I continue the rebuild of our 1977 MGB Roadster. We have a new battery. That kind of signals that I don't think we're a million miles away from trying to start this old thing, but we have a few things to deal with first. Well, actually, the list is quite long, but hopefully not too long before we get to start, or at least try to start her. Thank you in particular to all those who answered my query in the end of the last video, and that was the problem I was having over fixing the heater box. You may remember that I said that when the previous owner had taken the heater box out, the captive nuts that were holding the bolts in, that hold the heater box in, were completely mullered. The captive nuts had gone. They had, obviously they'd gone rusty, so he had to try and get the heater box out by any way he could, and he did that. But it left me with trying to work out how to get the heater box back in securely. And a number of you suggested using one of these and some Rivnuts, a Rivnut gun and Rivnuts. Now these are wonderful. I've never used these before. I seem to remember hearing of them way back when. I've used pop rivets, for years, but none of these. And these are Rivnuts, which are fantastic little things. If I just get one out of they come in all different shapes and sizes. Now, I don't know whether you can see that, but that looks just like a little tube with a flange on one end. Well, that goes, you push that down through the hole, and then using the gun, it squeezes only part of that metal back up, so it forms that capture against the bulkhead to which you're pushing it through. You can then, because it's threaded inside, screw a bolt into it, and it's worked brilliantly. Well, I say it's worked. I haven't put the heater box in yet. I wanted to do that right now with you. I've put 2 of the 3 Rivnuts in, but for those of you who've not used one of these before, well, A, I wanted to know that I could do it first, but B, it's just a piece of cake to use. So thank you so much to all of you who suggested that. We're going to try and get the heater box in today. The other thing I want to do is put the fluids in the car. The gearbox is empty of oil, the engine is empty of oil, so clearly I want to fill those 2 up, and we'll do that today. Other bits and pieces, we're going to check that we've got the right hoses to hook the radiator up. We've got the radiator hooked up to the engine, but we haven't got it hooked up to the expansion tank, and also the hoses onto the heater box as well, and various other bits and pieces that I want to try and get done today. I bought a new set of plugs so we can make sure the gaps are right on those. So there's lots to do. Time to get started. So you can see the problem that I've got. I've put 2 Rivnuts in already, and they're in there nice and firmly and not going anywhere. But I've left a 3rd one to show how it's done, and it's really not very difficult at all. The bolt under there has completely gone, and as I said in the last video, obviously once I put the heater box in there, that's completely inaccessible. So I can't put a bolt on the other side unless I weld one on, and again, that would be very difficult to do, especially like me, if you haven't got a welding machine. So the answer has been to buy these Rivnuts. Now these come in so many different sizes, big, smaller. That's the smallest one, the M4 that comes in this kit. The kit itself was £48.95. There are cheaper ones and there are far more expensive ones. But the main tool is this gun now, and it is very, very simple to use. Different fittings depend on different sizes of the Rivnuts. This one is in there, which is for the M5, and all you do is you screw that in like that. It doesn't need to be tight at all, it's just so that it captures it. Then you put the whole thing into the hole, and that's the Rivnut in there. As you clamp it together, it pinches the metal in the Rivnut onto the car itself. You don't need to force it, it's done it, and that's not going any further now, and that now will not move. So all I need to do now is turn that, which will unscrew the gun from the Rivnut. And there we are, the Rivnut is installed, and that's not going anywhere. That's perfectly installed. I can now put the bolts in all 3 of those, therefore clamping the heater box down. I can't tell you how grateful I am to all those who suggested that. It has been an absolute lifesaver because I was really concerned about how I would solve that problem. So thank you for that. Let's get the box in. All right, after much huffing and puffing, and frankly, language that you wouldn't want to hear on YouTube, it's in, and the holes are lined up. I'm going to have to do something with these brake lines because they are a bit too tight on the top there, but I'm really not that worried about that at the moment. The fact is, this is in. I mean, that rubber seal that's on the back, it really does what it says on the tin. It was a real so-and-so, let's call it that, to get in. But it's in, which is brilliant. So I've just got to put some screws in. Now I've had to, because the more eagle-eyed amongst you will of course be shouting at your screens that the Rivnuts are metric and not imperial. And yes, they are, but frankly, that was the only way of getting these done. And as long as I've got metric bolts to go through them, which I have, then it's screwed down and it's done up. Job done. The rivets held brilliantly, and a few minutes later all the bolts were tight and I could move on to other important jobs like finishing attaching the coolant hoses, installing the valve tap for the car's heating system and replacing those old spark plugs with some fresh, correctly gapped plugs. Then it was time to install the oil cooler. One oil cooler looks in reasonably good condition. Actually, I mean, it looks virtually new. I'm sure it isn't, but it does look in very good condition. So I'm going to put that on. Clearly that goes right at the front of the car. New cooler pipes to go on, and I was going to say fixing kit. It's not a fixing kit. They're two grommets that go down beside the radiator to hold them as they go through the bulkhead, and then a couple of straps to keep the pipes together so they don't flail all over the engine. So, time to get this lot on. What I want to do first is to attach the cooler pipes to the engine first, run them through, then we'll get the car up on the ramp and attach them to the oil cooler and bolt the oil cooler onto the underside of the engine. So let's have a go at that first. So we'll feed, firstly, goes through in front of the radiator, and we'll just leave that there. That gives us something to work with, and the other end onto the engine here, and we'll just get that done up. Now again, this is a clamping type bolt, so you need to make sure that you get it on nice and square to have a good leverage to start. Right, that's that one on. And again, with the other one, now you do have two ends. That sounds stupid, doesn't it? Of course you've got two ends to it. One of them has a straight end, straight bolt. That's the end that goes onto the cooler. The other one, as you can see, is slightly curved. This is the end that goes onto the engine, so that you can alter the angle of it to make it fit properly. It's not a huge job, this. It's a little bit fiddly, but at the end of the day, it's not very difficult. Right, so all I need to do now is push this up, get some right bolts first, push this up, feed those back through so they don't catch. So I've got those started, tighten those up, great. And the oil cooler is on. If it looks a bit bare around here, well, of course, because there is a valance to go around there, which I have, which will bolt on, which gives that some form of protection. But at the same time, there's some kind of fiberglass, cardboard type affair that bolts on underneath. That clearly can go on at a much later date. Now, the cooling system on the MGs varies from year to year. On the blue GT, you can see that the yellow fan is coupled to the water pump pulley, and that's what draws the air through the radiator. On the later model, and that was the last year on 75 that they did that, on the later models, this being the 77, there's an electric fan, which I would love to take out and show you, but now the radiator's in, I can't without risking scratching paint and everything else. But this is an electric motor, plugs into the wiring loom, and does exactly the same job, just hopefully more effectively and efficiently. Now this one didn't come with the car. It's a second-hand unit, looks very second-hand as well. It's been tested, I'm told it works perfectly well, and I can get back to the previous owner, which is an MG Spares place, if there's any problem with it. I've got no doubt that it will be fine. And it's very, very easy. It just bolts through. It's got captive nuts on it already. And again, with copper slipped bolts into the captive nuts. Did I say captive bolts? I meant captive nuts. There we are. One. And two. Well, I thought I was in. There we are. So that's just in loosely. And then that will bolt straight into the wiring loom of the car. Job done, really. Here we are then, the first liquids that the car's seen in a good few years. We'll start with the water or the coolant, 50-50 mix roughly of coolant to water in here. I wanted to get a lot of coolant in there, get it supplied, because also it's got anti-corrosion properties as well. I'll flush the system again when everything's running, and I'll drain the oils, I'll drain the waters after the engine's run for a while. But let's start topping up. And I'm going to use a funnel as well, because this watering can is quite full and I really don't want to spill it absolutely everywhere. So I'll just hold that. And in it goes. Now the big test will show us whether there's any hole in the radiator, which when I filled the GT up there was, so that's got a new radiator in it. But this car, of course, I know very little about. No leaks so far that I can tell. Right, that's the water done. Let's just put that back in. I'll just put that in loosely for now. I'll tighten that up later. Now, onto the engine oil. I've already put a little bit in, but clearly before I put any more in, I want to put the oil filter on as well, because that would be the last thing that I would want, is to try and turn the engine over and have no oil filter going on. This is, again, one that was in the car when I bought it. I've checked, though, it is the correct one for it. So let's get this on. It just needs to be hand tight. It doesn't need to be too tight. There we are. That's the oil filter on. Gosh, this engine bay is looking good now. Okay, let's fill up. So I've got about 3.5 to 4 litres in there. I'm going to, it takes 5 litres to fill it up, but I'm just going to put that back on loosely just to stop any bits getting in. I'm going to leave that to settle, leave that to go down into the sump, check the dipstick well, after we've done the gearbox oil actually, and then top it up as necessary, make sure it's at the right level. Okay, onwards to the gearbox, which frankly is a bit of a pig to do, but I've managed to sort out a way using a funnel and a piece of garden hose. Allow me to show you. So the drain plug for the gearbox, not surprisingly, is on the bottom of it. I've undone it, I've drained it. It did have some oil in it, not as much as it should have, but it did have some. I've drained it, I've tightened that back up. The filler plug for the gearbox is on the side here. Exactly the same size filler cap as the bottom. But clearly, as you can see, it's going to be really damn difficult to fill that up. So let's just take that off. Like that, put that up there. Okay, and this is, as I said before, where a piece of hose and a funnel comes into play. Because what I managed to work out with the other one is if you put a piece of hose up through the engine, up through the hole into the engine bay, where actually you can get at it quite easily, that's if you can get it up there in the first place. And then that end, you put in the hole, all you've done is you've extended your filler. So now we just need to put the car down and fill up, put the funnel in the top of the hose so it doesn't spill, and put 3 litres of oil, 20 W50, same as the engine, into the gearbox. So what I've done, this is an old 1 litre plastic bottle, as you can see, because I've got a lovely tin, thank you Halfords, not that they paid for it, but I've got the proper 20W50 classic motor oil in a lovely tin, but of course it hasn't got, as modern plastic bottles have got, an account of how much you've poured in. And I need 3 litres, not 5. So I know that this is a litre, so I've just decanted a litre in there. And yes, whilst it takes a bit of time to do, because when this is empty, of course, I've got to put another litre in, then another litre in. At least I know that I've put 3 litres in there. So I'll just move that funnel into the hose there. Oh, just get a rag there and just wrap around. There we go. Okay, now with a bit of luck, I just pour this in and it'll go straight into the gearbox. And it can take a bit of a while. There we are, and it's just, as you can see, oh, it's just spilling out. So we know it's nice and full. Get the plug in, get your hands filthy dirty. That can come out for now. Just put that on the floor and clean up the mess. But at least we know we've got a gearbox that's nice and full. Tighten that up. One more, I think, just for good luck. There we are, right. So that's nice and snug in there. Gearbox is full of oil. There. That was just the last bit of engine oil going in as well. So she's full of water, she's full of engine oil, and she's full of gearbox oil. First time this car's seen any of those fluids in a good few years, at least 3 that I know of. She's very, very nearly ready to go. A few more bits and pieces to make sure. I'm not too worried about the wiring. Obviously I want to make sure the wiring's safe, but I'm not too worried about doing that first. I want to make sure she runs and how she sounds first of all. And we are very, very, very close. But that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Comments, I love the comments. You really help me out with the issue over the heater box and those Rivnuts. So thank you. That's something I won't forget in a long time. Like, subscribe, please comment, please push the little bell so that you're notified when the next edition is on, which I hope won't be too far away, and even more so, I hope we'll actually get this old girl started for the first time in a few years. Until then, cheerio.